Here we are. We have got Sermon Extra on a rainy Monday morning, and we just realized, too, we've got 2 sermons to cover, and we're getting started late because we've been chatting a lot and having fun this morning. Yeah. But we have got the Book of Ruth series that we are just completed our 3rd chapter and 3rd message on. And Pastor Dustin was off with the high school, Nebraska District High School Youth Gathering, and he led worship there. So
I haven't seen any video evidence, though. He may have just taken the Sunday off.
I saw a picture on Facebook from Candy Men's from the district
I take
office
it back.
showing him there.
It was extraordinary.
That was the theme, wasn't it?
Oh,
Excellent.
I thought that was like your own, evaluation of your sermon.
Of your sermon,
it was
yeah.
extraordinary.
Well, it was. I'm glad we sent you and not me, because I could not have lived up to those expectations.
It's extraordinary. That does kind of set you up for like your sermon needs to be extraordinary. Okay,
well, I can do that.
Bring in a fog machine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Super. Glad that went well. And
yeah, tell us about let's go there first.
Sure.
You were out in Kearney with high schoolers from all over the state. And
Yep. And there was a few from Colorado and I think South Dakota too, but mostly Nebraska district. So about 500 high school youth out there. So it was great. And Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, the theme was extraordinary. Coming out of the Gospel of Luke, where those kind of seeing the things that Jesus is saying and doing, and it's like, wow, we have seen and we have heard extraordinary things today. So the theme was just about the extraordinary love of God that we have, and the sermon that I preached, then I got to close it up with kind of the sending service, and looked at Acts chapter 4, and this is where Peter and John had just healed a man, something pretty extraordinary, and the religious leaders are not happy because they're like, didn't we just get rid of Jesus, and now we just keep hearing about Jesus, and now they're saying he's risen, and they bring them forward, and they arrest them, and they're like, I don't get it. Like, these are just simple, ordinary, uneducated fishermen. How are they doing these extraordinary things? And then the best part, this is my favorite part of Acts 4:13. It says they recognized that they had been with Jesus. And so that's kind of, I closed everything out with the high schoolers. Like, as we're getting ready to go back home again, my hope and prayer is that each of us as we go, when people see us, they'll recognize that we've been with Jesus.
That's cool. That's cool. You can't, I love this. We've said the statement often in sermons. You can't, how do we say, you can't meet Jesus and remain the same or something. We've used different ways of saying that, but the idea, I think, more theologically accurate, you can't be met by Jesus and remain the same, but the fact that, you come out of his presence, I think of Moses coming off of Mount Sinai and his face is glowing literally, but just extraordinary. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, and then the thing that comes right after that in that same section of Scripture, which ties back to the theme verse, is they're asked to stop, stop talking about Jesus, stop using his name. And Peter's response is, we cannot but talk about the things that we've seen and heard. Yeah. And again, the theme verse was all about, we have seen and we've heard these extraordinary things. So the extraordinary love of God, that was the hope, that we are convicted, like Peter, that we cannot but talk about these things.
Yeah. I just, today, and this ties a little bit into the Ruth series a little bit on chapter 3, but using that word extraordinary, extraordinary, above the ordinary.
Yeah.
And we have enough ordinary. I mean, the ordinary things of the world, again, we always harp on, turn on the news and you see all the ordinary. You see the chaos, you see the violence, the drug use, the
objectification. You touched on that.
Yeah.
That's very ordinary, right?
I talked, I kind of brought out the whole idea of morality, with, and I don't want to exit off of your sermon. I mean, they kind of fit together this way, but the idea that Ruth and Boaz, at night at the threshing floor, which was, those threshing floors were sometimes used for very inappropriate activity, immoral activity. And
I understand that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, that's the ordinary. I mean, that's the ordinary. That is the world we live in. the salacious news around us. I mean, what celebrity, who's sleeping with who, and what's going on, and I'll find some of my news like on different news apps. Every once in a while, I'll just kind of flip through things, and I can't believe how many, even on conservative news sites, it's like, well, this teacher's now on OnlyFans. Yeah. They've got an account and they're making millions of dollars, a year. This one is, it's making the ordinary sensational in terms of appealing to people's sinful desires, things like that. Anyway, so that's the ordinary. And as followers of Jesus, we have experienced the extraordinary. It's above all the ordinary. It surpasses everything that's ordinary here. And I think of Ruth and Boaz on the threshing floor, where she meets him, and he's like, I kind of said that at the end of this verse 18, I think it is, and he says, I let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. In other words, I want to guard and protect your reputation because I know it's true. We're not trying to pull one over on people. Nothing happened here. But others would assume it did if all they saw was this young woman leaving the threshing floor in the morning. Everybody would have been like, we know what Boaz was doing, and that's that Ruth, that Moabite, and it would just be fodder for everybody to just go off the rails. And so the extraordinary part of this message was, these both of them are good and godly, faithful people of integrity. And, to face temptation, to face the ordinary, to face the trials.
And that you went through even and trying to understand the story, like you just said, the threshing floor, and understanding that that was a place where things sometimes happened that people would go, oh, okay, they were on the threshing floor, and in the foot uncovering too, that you went deeper into that, because as a kid growing up in the church, it was always like, what are they doing? Is this dirty? Is this something I'm not supposed to hear here, or what's happening?
Well, the thing I was going to put in the message, and I just didn't use it, didn't need it, I suppose, but every town has a place where people go and park. You knew the place. In high school, you knew the place. I mean, this was, make out point, whatever it is. I mean, this is what it was. Well, the threshing floor was that place. That's
Inspiration point. I think that's what it was on Happy Days.
Is that what it was? Inspiration point. There you go. Inspiration. Call it whatever you want. It's, but that was it. It was, and I had a few people come up after worship on Sunday and go, kind of that same thing, Scott. It's like, thank you. I didn't understand the cultural context. Right. I didn't get that. And then the uncovering of Boaz's feet, there is language there. Now, this again, wasn't able to get into this in depth. There is language within that Hebrew phrase that could lend itself toward the idea of immorality. Okay, so that's not to say what I said on Sunday was like questionable, because when you look at the rest of the story, and this is where we talk about letting Scripture interpret Scripture, if you only pulled one phrase out of Ruth, you could go, I don't know. What was this immorality? Was it what? But when you look at the whole story, you're like, nope, that wasn't it, because it doesn't have to be. It's not it wasn't like they used an innuendo or something like that and then redeemed it. It was like, no, it was a statement that could have been, well, it's a little questionable. One way or the other, it just wasn't conclusive. So you have to look at the rest of the story and go, okay, what happened here? And then it's conclusive. All right, no, that was not about, leading towards something else. And when she says, cover me in your wings, it was like, okay, I've uncovered your feet, but cover me in your wings. Again, as I said yesterday, it was a marriage proposal, which again, talking about extraordinary. A woman proposing to a man.
And that's clear in Naomi's conversation with Ruth and Ruth's objection. She doesn't want to just be out visiting him for a night. Right. She's looking for a redeemer, right? And so that obviously uncovers itself. Right. But I do really appreciate that you unpack that in the message, but also brought that to us, especially challenging the men and women in there to follow this lead. And you mentioned it earlier that you know, we have this example in Jesus of extraordinary, and then the apostles too in the book of Acts as you featured, but we too are called to be extraordinary. And when you hear that, you might get excited and go, great, I can be special, I can be better, I can rise above or whatever, but it also means you're going to have great sacrifice.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to do things that maybe are against your very bones and your temptation and your sinful nature. So first of all, nothing about it is easy.
Right.
But as we know,
Right.
nothing good is usually easy. That's usually something hard that brings great fruit. And obviously what Boaz is doing is a great sacrifice, but as we know, amazing things are going to come from it or dun, 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 coming soon.
Well, and there was a great sacrifice also on Ruth's part, because it's obvious too from the story that Boaz is much older than she is. And again, that was customary. It was more customary back then that a girl could get married. I'm not suggesting that Ruth was just a teenager. I don't think that's true at all. But it was not uncommon for an older gentleman to marry a younger girl. It wasn't considered immoral. It wasn't robbing the cradle kind of thing like we would see today. But the story definitely points to the fact that Ruth is marrying an older guy. And that's why he says this act of kindness, and I think Pastor Dustin, you went into that a week ago on chesed, that kindness, that faithfulness. He says this act of kindness is better than the first. And the first would be like when she came to dinner, right? I mean, just the whole relationship, right? And he goes, this act of kindness is better than the first one in that you didn't go chase a younger guy, a wealthy one or a poor one. You just, and I kind of brought that up just in a brief sentence yesterday, but she had options. She had already been accepted by the people in Bethlehem. It says that she was renowned because Boaz says that your reputation is well known in town. Everybody knows you as a worthy woman. In other words, a righteous woman. So she had options. She could have gone and probably found a different suitor. But this was faithfulness to family. I mean, Naomi is
keeping
like
her word to Naomi.
Yeah. I'll do everything you've commanded me. And again, I don't think it was. I don't want to paint the picture of Ruth going, "Oh, are you kidding me? I got married to that guy. Are you serious?" I think it was. I'm sure it was a good thing, but I think sometimes we're not satisfied. We want the best, and it's like, well, wait a minute. As you were saying, Andy, that sometimes the sacrifice is necessary for the greater good of the family. For individuals.
She's a good man, a provider, a faithful man,
and he'd already demonstrated that.
That's right.
He had taken care of her, so. I just the word that kind of came to mind just as we kind of wrap up and look at then chapter 4, just the whole book of Ruth again is like an oasis, and I Pastor Dustin, I don't think you probably heard the sermon from yesterday. You were gone.
Not yet.
So, but the point is that I couched it in the whole time frame of Judges. If you read the book of Judges, it's a desolate landscape of rebellion. You name it. It's ups and downs, roller, and there's good stuff in there.
Famine.
Yeah. But here's Ruth. It's like this oasis in the midst of this desolate land. Well, we need a story like Ruth's in the oasis, as an oasis in the desolate landscape of just this world that seems to be spiraling out of control. And so here's the thing: it's a beautiful, beautiful story of Jesus as our Redeemer. He calls us his family. Ruth and Naomi needed family. We need family. And specifically, yes, the church, capital C, all of God's people, but the church, small c, Messiah, family, other churches in town that are blessings to those who gather under that roof, so to speak, but belong to that family. We need each other. And this story is one that demonstrates that. And so we get into then chapter 4, it'll be the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and I had several people come up to me after worship. And they're like, "Thanks for the cliffhanger," because I was like, "How is God going to work this out? People, tune in next week." But the whole idea of and I did go into the definition of a kinsman redeemer. What does that mean? And I kind of said, "Hey, there's one guy in front of Boaz, and that gets worked out." Chapter 4. Yeah. It's next week. So, so we get to wrap it up. I can't believe we're already this has been fun, and I can't believe we're already wrapping it up next week.
Yeah, the story, I mean, just reading Ruth, it goes quick. I mean, it does. 4 chapters.
Yeah,
so,
it does.
But it sets up so many other things throughout Scripture then too. Yeah. So
huge connections. I mean, this is really the one, tidbit that I did offer is like just a little over 1,000 years later, and you guys have said this already in the messages you did, is that Jesus is going to be born in that same little town of Bethlehem, and we're getting ready to start Advent. I mean, this is a little town of Bethlehem, and here we go. But it'll be fun to see how God brings this whole story together, and it's done in a beautiful way, and it does. I just think one other thing, this whole story of Ruth, again, demonstrates not only that God is using foreigners to carry out his plan of salvation, but the powerful use of women in the Old Testament. This was no small thing that Ruth asked Boaz to marry her. And he joyfully agreed to do so. And the other thing, real quick, I didn't get into this, but asking Boaz to marry her and asking Boaz to be a redeemer were 2 totally separate things. They were not intertwined, because the kinsman redeemer is a legal obligation. Asking him to marry her was not. He did not have any obligation to marry her. And so they're two totally different things. The book of Ruth, if you read some of the scholars and commentaries, they're like, this throws a wrench into Mosaic law, you name it. It's a very unique book in all of Scripture based on just how it unfolds. It's just not the ordinary. Yeah. It's extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Well, I do think that's kind of one of the themes that's maybe tucked away in it, because it was in chapter 2, the fact that, Boaz just keeps going above and beyond what was expected. And I mean, that definitely is speaks to what God does for us. He's always going above and beyond, and he puts the extra in our ordinaries. And so I'm excited. Looking forward to chapter 4, and we do have Thanksgiving tucked in the middle of that too.
I mentioned at the end of each service, 6:30 this Wednesday. Be there or be square.
And then take a look at our app, take a look at our website. You'll find the holiday schedule there for all of the worship opportunities, all the other related events.
And tell one person about the podcast that you're listening to.
There you go.
Because there are still a few that have not tuned in. So tell one friend, it will multiply.
It's on plenty of podcast platforms, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere.
Nice.
Can't miss it.
Yes. Awesome.
All right. Thanks for coming together, guys.
Yeah, it's always fun.
See you next week.
Sounds good.